welcome to another episode of Change Wired podcast. My name is Angela Shurina. I'm your host. I'm your partner in change, in personal and collective transformation and growth, and just someone who is passionate, obsessed with the journey of our life and figuring out how to grow, improve, become our best, unlock more of our potential one day at a time. So together we can create the most extraordinary world around us, the most positive impact, and live our best lives. And today's guest who's joining me on the podcast could not be a better representation of what we stand for on this podcast. Guys, imagine this. It's 1985. South Africa is closed off from most of the world, and a father tells his family they're selling the house, buying bicycles, and cycling around the globe. They move into a tent, they start training. The whole route is mapped out. The trip never actually happens, but the spirit behind it never leaves the 13-year-old boy who lived it. That boy grew up riding trains where he and his friends had to split up into different carriages because of the color of their skin, because that was the law. He grew up to meet Nelson Mandela as a student leader, and he grew up to become CEO of the Cape Town International Convention Center at just 37 years old. An entrepreneur who opened an African division for a Geneva-based global company, a government leader now responsible for job creation across an entire regional economy. And at 50, he's still pretty much just at the beginning. Newly minted PhD after spending 3 years interviewing 16 women and 16 men around the world to answer one question. How do leaders make decisions when everything is on fire, changing and shifting? That's Rashid Toefy. And today he is joining me on Change Wired podcast. In this conversation, Rashid talks about running toward uncertainty without a map, moving his family to Amsterdam for 6 months that turned into a career spanning 30 countries, driving into Morocco with 2 small kids and 0 hotel bookings, trusting a stranger down a dark alley in Marrakesh at night. Rashid goes into places most guests skip. The tough moments, the challenging moments, the moments of transformation that we don't always like to look back on. Growing up under apartheid, business crisis when 9/11 hit, while he had 100 South African students stranded in America. Honest admission about him seeing a therapist, still working through many personal challenges that, as any human, Rashid faces every single day. In this conversation, Rashid talks about why he believes a career can never really be planned, only recognized in hindsight, and how Rashid makes decisions what to say yes and no to. The difference between blind risk-taking and sense-making, trusting your gut without ignoring the facts in front of you. The one question Rashid's first coach used to ask him every single setback and how it rewired how Rashid processes adversity and challenges and setbacks. How 3 philosophies from 3 different cultures, Japan's Kaizen, China's Guanxi, and South Africa's Ubuntu, combine in the way Rashid leads today. Why Rashid believes refusing to settle for mediocrity isn't about ego. It's about what we all owe to the world and people around us. So get comfortable to enjoy this conversation about, yes, leadership. And most importantly, about what it takes to keep saying yes to the next unknown corner of your journey, refusing to settle for mediocrity in our messy, humbling human life. Here is my conversation with Rashid Toefy. Rashid Toefy, welcome to Change Wired podcast. I'm super excited to have you on my show, and I've known you for a while, and you are one of the nicest, kindest, smartest, dedicated, hardworking people I know, period. And yeah, I was very excited to have you on the show to talk about your journey, your career path, your life path, and to learn what it takes to create this kind of journey and the person that you've become. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I'm excited. I've loved since the day that I first met you. I think I saw we had a sort of kinship. There was something similar in thinking. I like the way your mind works, and yeah, it's been a pleasure working with you over the last few years, just seeing you in action, and so it's nice to have a conversation about leadership with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Rashid. Let's start with your journey, your life, your career journey. Could you paint maybe a map for our listeners? Where you are today, where it started, and maybe a few pins along the journey on this map, right? Exactly, of things or things that happened to you, or just something that is important to your journey to understand you as a person, as a leader.
I mean, it's been quite a varied journey. I mean, I think that's something we discussed before, but there's been some consistent things about it. I mean, I think the one consistent thing is that from a very young age, I was thrust into a leadership role. So because of various circumstances, I became I worked in places that because somebody left or the managing director left, I was cast into a leadership role in my 20s. And so leadership was consistent. The second thing is it's always had some sort of international travel exploration theme. And that tells you a little bit about me. While I've studied a lot in my life, that classic thing that people say you learn most from just 1 year overseas, for me, is like a university degree. And I've spent several years working abroad, So I mean, my life started before I even before I started university. I took 2 gap years. So I spent a year. I don't think you know that, Angela, but I spent a year in London, and I went to live in the States in outside Washington, D.C., and I worked on like American summer camps. So right there in the 90s, when Nelson Mandela just came out of prison and our country was in the transition, I saw with my own 2 eyes what the world looks like out there. And then my parents called me and said, "Hey, you're the smart guy in the family. No, you should come back and like study a university degree." And then I came back and I started at university. And after that, I started out in the travel industry, the youth and student travel industry. And it was amazing. It was very adventure. It was all adventure travel exchange programs. So we used to bring and send people from different parts of the world. And then I got that unique opportunity to go and work in Amsterdam, it was meant to be 6 months. And I had just got married. So my wife gave up the opportunity to have a really good job and said, "Let's just go. It's an adventure." It's 1996. And we headed off. And what started out as 6 months became a career in Amsterdam, where I became, as I said, by circumstance, the global marketing manager for an international organization. And I had then this surreal job of traveling to sort of a different country every month for 3 years. It was crazy. Yeah. And then after those 3 years, I came back and I worked for this travel organization for 7 or 8 years. And I knew I wanted to do more, right? And that's when I studied an MBA and thought, I want a bigger field of influence. And that's when I got the opportunity to work as the CEO of the Cape Town International Convention Center. So yeah, I don't know if I just continue as I keep telling you the trajectory.
What did you study, by the way, when you were talking about studying and then going to Amsterdam? What took you there?
So I studied economics, and I studied geographical and environmental science. So I kind of always wanted to be a town planner or something like that. But I ended up getting into this travel world and really loved it, because essentially I was changing people's lives on one journey, one overseas trip at a time. And at the time, as I said, post-apartheid, I wanted to let people experience getting out of South Africa and just growing. But so then when I did the MBA, it was at the business school. It gave me sort of a toolkit, but I needed after that an organization where I could deploy these new weapons. Yeah. It was like a bow and arrow, ready to go. And when I got the CEO job, I was 37 years old as the CEO of a big organization, and I was young, and it was a big challenge, but I loved it because it also it taught me, the hospitality industry taught me something, both as a young person. I've been working since I was 12, 13 years old, always waitering or working in a shop or something. But hospitality and tourism and travel teaches you that, it's about the experience. It's about making sure what matters is not just the profit or the bottom line. It's, does that other person that you're serving have an amazing experience? So I brought about this philosophy of what we call the experience economy. And we really embedded that. And so people, if you ever go to the Cape Town International Convention Center, I think you feel that it's a place that certainly doesn't look like it's a state-owned entity. It was running like a private sector entity with a board. And I brought about that culture of just trying to, anything's possible. It was literally nothing's impossible. If somebody wants something, you just tell them, let's do it,
Yes.
Yeah. And then that was an incredible experience. Yeah. And had some incredible different events and met crazy people. Yeah.
Now that you're telling me about that, I'm like, that's, when we met, I had this feeling that you are always looking for opportunities to help people to have the best experience they can have, like in terms of communication or a meeting with you or doing something together. So I'm like, that's where it's coming from. Now I understand.
And Angela, I'm a reader, right? So I remember reading the book called Apple. It wasn't Steve Jobs' book. It was the Apple experience. It was how Apple introduced the experience economy. So, when you go into an Apple store, nobody's trying to sell you anything. They literally go, they let you play, first of all, with everything. They just let you play. And then they just stand around and see if you need help. Nobody comes up to you and goes, can I please help you? As if you feel like leaving the shop. And so I said, this is how I want people to come to CTICC and feel that experience. So I bought everybody, 150, 200 people, got a copy of the book. And we would spend a day talking about the experience economy. And then I would ask them, tell me in your area, whether you're the chef or the parking guy or the CFO, what are you going to do to make it an incredible experience, And then after that, I had 7 years. I always get a bit of a 7-year itch. The first job was 7 years, then that one. And then I was kind of headhunted, but to join a global association management conference, business, which was based in Geneva. But I opened the Africa division, MCI. And wow, it taught me a lot. I must say, being an entrepreneur was character building. It was rough. It was tough. Raising money, you realize that people respect you sometimes because of your position, because you're CEO. And suddenly when you leave that and you start your own business, it's just you, Rashid, and everything you can deliver. So it was tough. I learned a lot, and I grew a lot in that period.
Yeah, so I have no doubt. Like it's such a different experience from the perspective, as you said, like authority and being maybe a decision maker, being someone who people come to with different requests, and then being on the other side, so just be trying to build something and going to other people with different requests.
It's humbling, because when you're a CEO, you have a big team, you have an exco team, and any number of resources at your disposal and budgets. And then suddenly I had a team of 5 people, and I had to do no PA, no executive assistant, just doing your own diary. And it teaches you how to hustle, right? And I think it taught me something that's not just, I learned that you need to be able to be entrepreneurial, but when I bring that entrepreneurial spirit when I then joined government. So I got kind of called. I got a call from someone in government and said, hey, don't you want to apply for this job? And people often think, wow, Rashid went from private sector to government. Did I settle? Did I leave the kind of adventure behind, But I can tell you something. I finally reached a point where I realized, and my job right now is creating jobs in the Western Cape economy. So for me, are people employed? Is the economy growing? And it's an amazing feeling I went from helping a couple of 100 people, maybe a few thousand people at the CTICC to now helping millions of people. So I think it's the purpose, the greater purpose is what drives me and makes this experience in government so special. And I try to bring that same private sector entrepreneurial leadership and spirit to my job in government. So that's me. And as you know, we can talk a little bit later about me then at 50 years old, deciding to embark on another round of studying. But that might be coming up later.
Yes, so it sounds like, well, that the whole journey sounds like very aligned, coherent path that sort of felt right and felt aligned with your values, with your purpose, with your mission, and you just went for it. Whatever you took your resources, your skills, your talents, and then put it to use where you were needed. It
But
was,
it's not at all planned, right? So it's
yeah,
interesting. Looking backwards, it looks like a coherent thread. But I can tell you, if you asked me at 21 years old, what do you want to do? I was quite
yeah,
confused. I was like, so for me, your career, I don't think it can be planned right from the beginning. You have to see how the opportunities unfold. So it's always nice in retrospect to look back and it looks like a nice path.
yeah.
But actually, every opportunity came when I least expected it. Like right now, I don't know what's going to be, what I might be doing in 5 years' time. And I like that excitement. I don't know what I want to be doing in 5 years' time after this current role, for example. And I think that's so I don't have such clear plan that nothing's going to get in the way or something might get in the way and I'll be disappointed. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, a couple of things here that are very interesting. Courage to pursue a path without knowing where it leads. Actually, very few people can do it, right? With such conviction and boldness and embracing it. Were you always like that? They're like, I'm embracing this
Mhm.
path that's unfolding, even though I don't know where it leads, but it feels right and I'm going to take it.
I can tell you that spirit of adventure comes from my dad and mom. Like my dad had a crazy idea when I was 13 years old that we would sell everything and cycle around the world.
Mm,
Now, this was 1985 in a time when South Africa was closed off, and we literally did that. My dad just sold the house. We moved into living in a tent in a caravan. We bought bicycles and we started practicing. And for a year, we were practicing to do this crazy thing of cycling around the world. Like we had the route planned, and I just at the time I thought, wow, this is just crazy. And we still went to school and we did what we did. But I can tell you from a young age and then throughout my life, I've been quite an adventurer and realizing that I like audacious goals and things that look like it's impossible, like bring it
yeah.
on for me. And so for various reasons, we didn't do that. There was some personal circumstances that meant we couldn't go. But you can see then subsequent to that, I've traveled to over 60 countries around the world because
Amazing.
I wanted to travel around the world, right?
Yeah.
And so I've continued to travel around the world. It didn't happen as 1 year on a bicycle, but I still have a passion for cycling. That's my main kind of sport.
Mhm.
And I have traveled around to every part of the world and I continue to do so. And I'd always like to stay
Mhm.
traveling and exploring. So
Can I also
yeah.
ask you a question about your internal conversation? So when you take on an adventure, whether that's traveling physically or career path or maybe a new policy, do you always have this confidence that's like, I'll figure out the way? Or is there a voice of
I don't
doubt of like, how do you
I
navigate it?
I mean for me, I love road trips because I don't know where I don't have for sure or know where to go. My wife and I went overseas to Morocco with two small children with no hotel bookings. We just hired a car, pointed the car in one direction, and then said, when we get there, we'll figure out where to stay. So
Yeah.
I don't think I have any certainty that it's going to work out, but I have a trust that we're going to allow it to unfold. As I said about my career, but for me, if you've got the fundamentals, if you have the toolkit, you have a car,
Hmm.
you've got some plans, and you have the right sort of skills and tools with you, you can
Yeah.
achieve anything. It's like skiing. I love skiing down down a new slope that I've never been on. I don't know what's happening down the next corner,
Yeah.
but you know what to do, you know what you shouldn't do, and the adventure of that is that exhilaration. I think is what is a thread in my life right now.
Hmm. Well, in terms of adventure and choosing to pursue different course of action on a ski slope or a different path again at your work, how do you decide what to say yes to or what to say no to? A lot of people these days especially struggle with like, there is so much uncertainty. We don't know how it's unfolding. How do you decide what to pursue, where to go, what decision to make, whether that's life or career? Like, what's your playbook for making those
Mm.
decisions and choices?
Playbook is an interesting word because I've just done my study, as you know, about crisis. And when there's crises, the playbook is out the window. You have to rely on intuition. You have to rely on a little bit of your gut. So it's a combination of your intuition about what feels right, but combined with a kind of contextual awareness of what's happening around you. And what I read about and what I've seen is what's called sense making. So you make sense of the data that you've got, and you say, so it's not an uncalculated guess. You know, if I was going, you and I were doing a business adventure somewhere, we would know more or less where we want to go. What are the factors we need to take into account? It's not going uninformed, but then be open to the fact that when you get into the room and you feel the room, you might just change up what you say. You might change up your facilitation. So I love facilitating strategy sessions because you must literally have a blueprint, a little bit of a playbook, but with a lot of open flexibility to respond to the circumstances. So I think I've always responded to the environment and then moved from there. And you will get scary moments when you're in Morocco and your kids are sleeping and it's dark and you now can't find a nice place to stay, right? That has happened. But mostly we found incredible places. In fact, that very night, the kids were in the car. I was running around the streets of Marrakesh going, shucks, everything looks closed. And somebody said, just come with me. And we walked down these little alleyways. And eventually he opened this door. And it was this incredible Riyadh, which is these beautiful places. And it was unbooked. We got the whole place. It was probably one of the nicest hotels we've ever stayed in. And it was incredible. And it was kind of waiting for us to find it. But just before that, you could easily have just given up and said, shucks, this is a terrible idea. This is not working.
Yeah.
So you never know when the next opportunity is going to land.
While you're speaking, it becomes obvious that you do listen to intuition a lot and you trust it quite a bit. Do you have any practices or something that helps you to be in tune with that? Because there is, again, like so much noise around the world. And
I think the practices are kind of being in touch with your emotions. I think you need to feel it in your body because, you can think your brain helps you make certain decisions. Probably everybody thinks your brain is making all the decisions, but actually your gut and your body and your skin and your heart is actually making a lot of decisions. There's a lot of thinking and feeling that happens in your heart, in your stomach, in your body. And I think if you trust all those elements, for me, that's the practice is feel it a bit. Don't think it so much. Just feel the moment, feel the room, feel what somebody's saying or this opportunity and trust that and then verify it, as they say on the American visa forms. They trust and verify.
Yeah, I guess, don't
or verify
just
these
jump.
days.
Don't just jump with everything you've got to something that feels right, but sort of maybe feel your way into it.
I don't think I've been that adventurous in my career. I mean, I think I had in a 30-year career, only 3 years of it was an entrepreneur. The other parts were quite well thought through, structured career moves that led to better opportunities and good salary. And so I'm not. You might think I'm very adventurous and just doing crazy things, but actually it's quite calculated and it's trusting your gut, as I said, but making sense of the situation before you jump.
Is it, like this approach? Let's maybe touch on your latest accomplishment, PhD in studies and decisions in crisis. It feels like it's very much aligned with this philosophy or trying to maybe understand it better. Like, how do we make decisions in that uncertainty, in this crisis situation? Like, why did you decide to pursue it and what did you learn?
Well, people asked me, like, how did you do your PhD in 3 years and you didn't look like it stressed you out? And I think it's because I did it on a subject that I felt was like a real calling. I've experienced a lot of crises in my life, in business, in having to deal with circumstantial crises in the economy. And so at the time when I started doing the PhD, I had developed a sense of understanding in real life of what leading in a crisis meant. And so what I did was I took that practice. I said to myself, I want to interview leaders around the world. And I interviewed 18 women and 16 women and 16 men. So I was quite deliberate because I got a sense that gender was an really important factor in making decisions. And I'm glad I did that because it's become one of the major themes of my study. But but I did a subject, I studied a subject that I believe I had some life experience, some lived experience of, and then I kind of verified that with evidence now. So I have transcripts of interviews where some of the things I believed I now verified with evidence and research, and some of the things was disproved. Some of the things were new, and that was nice, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's been an exciting journey, and I loved it, and I think I'll always be a continual learner,
Yeah,
student.
sounds like you've gone, almost you've lived several lifetimes, it seems like in one, and you're you're just getting started. You briefly touched upon having gone through a lot of challenges, whether that's business, work, life, etc. And although at first it felt like, well, it's just continuous adventure for you, right? And just one thing, one door opens up after another. And you mentioned those challenges. Can you maybe talk more towards like some of the challenges to some degree, and then what helped you to overcome that, to go through them and get to the other side?
I think personally, as a South African, I lived my youth in apartheid South Africa, a world of like discrimination because I was the wrong color skin, and
Mm,
and and that sets you up. I mean, for me, I was like 24 years old so my whole childhood was living through experiences like where you and me couldn't sit in a restaurant; it would be like illegal. I couldn't go to the beach that I wanted to with my friends. So I had my parents put us in a school that was multiracial,
mhm,
and we would literally catch the train we'd have to choose, like some of us would have to sit in the white carriage and some would have to sit in the black carriage, and at the first and the third class. So I think you grew up in South Africa in those years with real adversity, with having to live with change. But then I lived through change, right?
mhm,
I was privileged enough to become like a student leader. I was involved in student politics. So I was on student representative council, and I actually met Nelson Mandela as part of that, and a few other lovely people. But it was seeing with my own two eyes that even the worst adversity we could get through because of people who struggled, people who endured. So
mhm,
so I think that's the first sort of OG primordial challenge and crisis, if you like. And then
mhm,
in my life, I think there's been other challenges in business, whether it's, I was running a travel business, sending students to America to go on a J1 visa, and 9/11 hit, right? So I have 100 South Africans in America, 9/11 hits, and you have to deal with the parents and the fact that the whole world changed at that point, right? And
yeah,
so it was those. I just thought about that now. I often think about the more recent crises in my life, but that was quite a big one. And then there's things like the water crisis in South Africa, the drought, COVID. So all those things actually happened before I started my PhD, and so I had those as real experiences. And then on a more personal level, I'm not shy to say that I have a therapist, and I've gone through a lot of personal challenges, and I'm
mhm,
consistently dealing with it, and I live with certain challenges that I try to tackle in my
mhm.
personal life. And so that's so yeah, getting through it day by day.
Well, getting through it day by day, can we open up a little bit more about that? What I'm looking for is habits
Yeah.
of the mind, or traits, conversation that you have inside of your head that allows you to get through that and to work through that and to get to a better place, to grow through that. Because they say like trauma can do two things to people. It can make you like less capable, or it can make you grow. And I'm always like interested in the what is it that allowed you to grow through experience, not to give up, but instead rise above that through those
Mm.
experiences. What's your understanding or take on it?
I mean, I think I'm a very positive person. I somehow, I joke about the fact that my blood type is B positive, and maybe one day I'll write a book about being positive. But my blood type is B positive, so it runs through my blood. but it runs through my body is be positive. But I can't believe how one can wake up and not be like thankful. Look outside, and I've woken up in a caravan park in a very living in a low income neighborhood, but always seen the joy in the world. Whether it was a young child making little huts on the field outside our house, or going on a little family road trip, not to a very fancy hotel, but to a lovely campsite, and just thinking, wow, this is like incredible. This is like we're in the wild and we're at the ocean. And so I think I've been somehow in me, and maybe if I look back, it's engendered by an adventurous family, but I've never let the adversity or the challenge like get me internalize that. So I really truly believe that you decide if you can be happy that day. And of course, there are challenges that can be very it can hit you. It can absolutely take you down. And everybody has those. I'm not saying everyone's challenges are not big, but I don't think enough people realize how big a role they have themselves to play in being positive, in saying, I'm going to have a good day. I'm going to start out being nice and maybe smile to the security guard at my office before he smiles to me. So it's being the person who can do that. And then, I'm a believing person. I think it's always nice when a crisis hits to know that there's a higher power, and to say there's a higher power that even has determined that you should go through this crisis. I had a coach as a young person, Karina, you know her,
Yeah.
Karina Anderson, and she was my first coach I've ever had. And she always would tell me, Rashid, what's the lesson in that? So I know you've just been through a personal crisis, but can you think what was the lesson? Why did you have to go through that? So trying to turn that adversity into a lesson also is quite a trick. It's quite a tool. And I think it can be learned, because you don't have to let it depress you and go down a certain route. You can decide that there's a lesson in any crisis and then learn from it and kind of keep pushing on,
Yes, such an important insight, I believe, that you have a choice whether you decide to see that silver lining, that lesson, or you don't. And as I always, like to meditate on this idea of like what's most useful to you, to see negative and then have a bad day because you decide to see things negative, or try to find a lesson and positive and silver lining, which ultimately makes you feel better, right? It's not even speaking about what impact then
the
you
impact
create.
on others. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think there's having my internal compass. If you ask me what's my mission in life, it's to kind of it's to be for the people who know me and who are around me, for me to get the best out of them. Now, that sounds like a mission not for me, but for other people. But what that mission does is it drives me to be the best of the best, right?
Yeah.
I want people who know me and who are friends with me and who are working with me or for me or my boss to feel that I'm bringing the best out of them. I'm showing them they have the unlimited potential, and that has driven me to realize I need to be that example. So I'd like anyone to know that you can be a kid who came from the hood, who didn't have a lot of money and ended up getting a PhD and getting the highest qualification you get. And this is someone who at university was more sporty and looking, had girlfriends and had political career. I was doing politics and girlfriends and sport, and hardly passing my university degree to then finally get a PhD. It says it's possible,
Yes.
If you apply your mind to it.
Well, thank you so much, for sharing your purpose, your mission, what you're trying to create in the world through people. Maybe as a couple of last question, I'd like you to open up the principles that I researched and learned about that you live by, the Kaizen and Ubuntu, and then what you just also mentioned, not settling for mediocrity. Like, can you tell me, how did you stumble upon those? Why did you decide to make it part of your life? And why it's important?
I mean, Kaizen, I kind of stumbled when I was doing my master's, my MBA. I did it on collaborative leadership. So interestingly, it was how do leaders make collaborative decisions. It wasn't about crisis. It was collaborative decision making And I looked at all ancient philosophies. So I looked at Kaizen, the Chinese principle of Guanxi, and then South Africa's Ubuntu, and said most cultures have something that drives them fundamentally. So Guanxi is important. You can't do business in China without first making friends, without having a drink, having a meal. So you can't arrive there and decide to do the deal,
Yeah.
Whereas in another culture, in a European culture, this kind of I think, therefore I am, the Descartes sort of theory. They really want to get to the business, What's the deal? What's the cost? What's good? What's in it for me? What's in it for you? So I think that tells you have to be aware of your circumstances. So the Kaizen, and then Ubuntu, of course, it's South Africa's almost, you feel it here. It's the energy in the place, that
I am because we are.
We are. But I like the combination of Kaizen is like continuous improvement, that Japanese continuous improvement. And for me, it's a realization that you need to have that Japanese principle of continuous improvement, but realizing that you also belong to a village and a community. So it's not just me for me, it's me doing my best, but also because there are people, there's a community that matters. They also support me and they allow me to do my best. And by me doing my best, can you see the sort of circular argument? But I don't think I've actually ever written a paper or anything on Kaizen and Ubuntu, but they are two sides of a different theory, a different concept, but they're quite similar in some way. Or they're not similar, they kind of complement each other. I think if you can use them as complementary. And then the settling for mediocrity, I think it comes from that passion to just want to be better. And I think there's many things. There were some not nice experiences. I played volleyball for like our province and our country as a young kid. So I made the South African junior Springbok volleyball team. I was the captain of that team. And before I did that, our school competed in a national schools championship. And I think the best lesson for me was not winning the first year. And it was the most painful experience. We felt we had done everything to win that tournament. We went to Johannesburg and we got to the final and they beat us, And it was like, it really hit me, There's not many volleyball tournaments that I lost after that. Because after that, the next year we came back and won and became the best school in the country. And I became like the captain of the national junior team. And then I went to university. And for the 4 years that I was at university, UCT was the best university team. Now, it's not just because of me, but I know what it takes, how hard you have to work to win. And you've got to be the one out in the, you can tell us about this, be in the gym. But at the time when I was a young student, we would run hills. Like our coach would sometimes say, we didn't touch a ball for an hour. All we did was fitness. And then at the end of the practice, he says, okay, now let's play. And then you're playing a game of volleyball with your legs having run up and down the steps for like an hour. Or he would say, let's go. We put chairs in a row, like big chairs.
Yeah.
And we have to jump over them. And then just when you think you're tired and your legs can't go, he says, take a break. And you think, we're about to play some ball. And he says, okay, let's do it again. And that's the difference when you get into that semi-final or that final, when both teams look like they're good enough. You just know what you are. You know what you've got. You've got stuff to go to. You know how it feels. You know how the pain feels of working. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess
sport has taught me that a bit.
Yeah. I guess if I heard you right, that drive to not settle for mediocrity, it doesn't come from this idea, or I'm going to be the greatest, but it's more about how can I show up as my best self. So together we do our best at, living this life, creating more positive impact, improving things and making the world the best
just doing the best you can. And I just working hard and pushing through what you think is these self-imposed limits. I think we have these rules, that Vishen Lakhiani calls it bullshit rules, where you have these rules that make you think, oh, I'm tired now. I can't go anymore. I want to sit down. But if you have a coach or you have a volleyball coach that says, let's go, we're running again, or we're playing again, we're not stopping until we're done, it pushes you beyond what I think people have self-imposed limits for themselves.
Yeah.
Some people might be listening here today going, wow, you're smart, you did a PhD, I can't do that. But that's because you're telling yourself you can't do that, right? But if you tell yourself I want to and I can, you really can. So
Yes.
I think we can do a lot more than we think. I think our body has a self-limiting kind of tendency to protect you, but you can learn to push a little bit harder.
Well, the last question, if you don't mind, why do you believe it's important to do that, to push through those doubts, to push those limiting beliefs and to still strive to be better? Why do you think it's fundamentally important to do?
Well, I do think it moves the world forward. I don't think this world is going to be a better place for everybody if people are not pushing to do better. So when I see people being entrepreneurs or starting a business with no money, I'm just like, wow, that's somebody who didn't just settle. And so every day I think to myself, in any way, my PhD may not have a big impact on people directly. It's for me that I did it. But someone might look at me and think, wow, if Rashid can do a PhD, they don't have to do a PhD. They might just start a business with 500 Rand. But it's I think we owe it to the world we're in to leave it in a better place than it was before we got here. And I think that's what I'd like to do. I'd like a legacy of some sort, I guess, to be that I touched this world a little bit and people will remember that it was slightly improved by my being in it.
Yeah. Yes, well, on this beautiful note, Rashid, I think we can finish this podcast. Is there anything that you would like to add to your message to put it out into the world to our listeners and beyond? Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I think interesting. I just try to reflect on the thing that first when you showed me the little drawing that I told you I still have on my desk, but this idea of the fact that it's your mind and your body and your soul, and then you're like, so the systems that make that work. I think pulling that all together, this is where you and I see eye to eye on. You need to have all those bits together, and then you need to put some rigorous systems in place. You can't just assume that a big goal or a strong body or this, it's not one or two other things. It's putting the structures and the mechanisms in place that make it work. And when you showed me that, I think before I started my PhD or I was in the middle of it, it really struck me, and it still does. And I wanted to give you a shout out for that because it inspires me when I see someone with such clarity of thought. And that's why I said it was nice to be on your podcast, because it's sharing a similar philosophy. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you so much, Rashid, for inspiring with your life, with how you approach people, what you're trying to do in the world, like your spirit and how you live your purpose. Just thank you so much. Thank you so much also for being a guest on this podcast. And your message going to be delivered to what the statistics say to 122 countries in the world. So thank you so much for sharing it. And yes, looking forward to learning from you more in the real world. And the last but not least, where should our listeners go to learn more about it? Is there a social media profile, a website, or what's the best place?
I'm not on many socials except LinkedIn. So if somebody's interested, wants to reach out to me, you can. My PhD thesis, for example, isn't published, but I think anyone who's interested in it can talk to me. I continue to learn from people, so would love to engage with some people who are interested in my leadership philosophy or my journey.
Yes, and I highly encourage listeners to connect with Rashid. Again, one of the smartest, kindest, most inspirational people I know. So please do so. And Rashid, thank you. And till next time, keep inspiring.
Thank you very much. Cheers.